The training hall fell silent when senior instructor Thelvos entered. He was a marathon, tall and thin with gray skin that seemed to absorb light. His four eyes moved independently, scanning every corner of the room at once. The 42 cadets stood at attention, representing 12 different species from across the Galactic Coalition. Corporal Unipark stood in the back row with the other humans. There were only 3 of them in the elite reconnaissance program. Beside her stood Daisung Ko, a former Special Forces soldier with calm eyes and steady hands. On her other side was Hana Lim, the youngest of the 3, who specialized in technical systems. Thelvos walked to the front of the hall. His movements were smooth and silent, like smoke drifting through air. "Tomorrow," he said, his voice cold and flat, "you will face your final assessment." A screen behind him lit up, showing a massive dome structure. The image rotated slowly, revealing its 3-kilometer diameter and complex internal terrain. "The assessment dome," Thelvos continued. "Inside, you will find forests, rivers, rocky terrain, and urban structures. Your mission is simple. Enter from your assigned point. Reach the central objective. Do not be detected." A Valkyrie cadet raised his hand. His blue skin shifted color slightly as he spoke. "What detection systems will be active, instructor?" "All of them." Thelvos almost smiled. "Thermal imaging that can detect a temperature change of 0.1 degrees. Motion sensors that track movement down to 3 millimeters per second. Sound detection that can hear a heartbeat from 50 meters away. Visual scanning in all light spectrums." Whispers spread through the cadets. Yuna remained silent, her eyes fixed on the dome schematics. "The dome was designed by Marathon engineers," Thelvos said. "My people are considered the finest infiltrators in the galaxy. We designed this test to challenge even us." His 4 eyes turned toward the back of the room, finding the humans. "For species without natural stealth capabilities, this assessment is considered impossible. You may withdraw without penalty." Yuna felt the stares of other cadets on her. The Valkyrie could change their skin color to match any background. The Jorathi could suppress their bioelectric fields until they became invisible to most sensors. The Felixari had night vision so perfect they could hunt in complete darkness. Humans had none of these gifts. Cadet Rena, a Felixari female with golden fur and sharp green eyes, turned to look at Yuna. "Perhaps the humans should save themselves the embarrassment," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Their species sweats constantly. They radiate heat like small furnaces. The thermal sensors will find them in seconds." Several cadets laughed. Yuna did not respond. She continued studying the dome layout on the screen, memorizing every detailed dot. After the briefing ended, cadets gathered in small groups to discuss strategy. The Valkyrie talked about which pigment patterns would best match the dome's terrain. The Jorathi practiced suppressing their electrical signatures. The Felixari planned their routes through the darkest sections. No one spoke to the humans. They soon walked up beside Yuna. "She's not wrong," he said quietly, "about the thermal sensors. Human body temperature is 37 degrees. The dome's ambient temperature is probably 20 degrees. We'll light up like signal fires." "I know," Yuna said. She was still looking at the schematics on her personal tablet. "But there's something they're not considering." "What?" Before Yuna could answer, a shadow fell over them. Thelvos stood there, his 4 eyes focused entirely on her. "Corporal Park," he said. A word. He led her to a quiet corner of the hall. They soon watched them go, concern on his face. "I have reviewed your training records," Thelvos said. "You are skilled. For a human? But skill will not help you tomorrow. The dome will detect your heartbeat before you take 10 steps." Yuna met his gaze steadily. "Is that why you asked to speak with me, instructor? To tell me I will fail?" I am giving you a chance to preserve your dignity. Withdraw from the assessment. No one will think less of you. Humans were not designed for infiltration. Designed, Una repeated. That's an interesting word. Your species evolved on a temperate world with moderate challenges. You have no natural camouflage, no ability to regulate your body temperature, no way to mask your biosigns. These are simply facts. Una was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Instructor, how long have marathons been practicing stealth techniques? Thelvo seemed surprised by the question. Our infiltration traditions date back 12,000 years. Humans have been hunters for 300,000 years, Una said. We survived by learning to approach prey without being detected. We had no claws, no fangs, no venom. We had only our minds and our patience. Every technique you consider natural to your species, we had to learn through thousands of generations of practice. Learned techniques cannot overcome biological limitations. Maybe, Una said. Or maybe biological limitations can be controlled by a trained mind. She gave a small bow of respect. Thank you for your concern, instructor. But I will not withdraw. She walked away before he could respond. That night, Una sat alone in the observation deck, watching ships pass through the station's traffic lanes. The stars beyond seemed cold and distant. Daesung found her there an hour later. He sat down beside her without speaking. He thinks we can't do it, Una said finally. Can we? She turned to look at him. When I was young, my grandmother taught me traditional archery. Not the modern kind with computer assists. The old way. She made me stand completely still for hours, controlling my breathing until my heartbeat slowed to almost nothing. She said our ancestors could become invisible without magic or technology. They just had to remember how to be patient. Patience won't fool thermal sensors. No, but understanding our own bodies might. Una stood up. Get Hannah. Meet me in our quarters. I have an idea. Daesung studied her face for a moment. Whatever he saw there made him nod. All right. But if this doesn't work, we're going to look very foolish tomorrow. Una smiled slightly. We're humans at an alien military academy. We already look foolish. At least this way, we might surprise them. She walked toward the exit, her mind already working through possibilities. The instructors thought humans were limited by their biology, but humans had spent their entire existence learning to overcome limitations. They had crossed oceans in wooden boats. They had climbed mountains that should have killed them. They had walked on their own moon using nothing but mathematics and determination. Becoming invisible was just another problem to solve. Behind her, through the observation window, a shooting star traced a bright line across the darkness. It disappeared in seconds, leaving no trace that it had ever existed. Tomorrow, Una planned to do the same. The human quarters on Station Vareth 9 were small and simple. 3 beds, 3 storage units, 1 shared table. The Galactic Coalition had given humans the smallest rooms available. Assuming they would not stay long in the program, Yun sat at the table with her tablet displaying the dome schematics. Daesung arrived first, followed by Hannah, who looked tired but curious. What's this about? Hannah asked, sitting down across from Una. Daesung said, You have a plan. I have the beginning of one, Una said. But I need both of you to help me finish it. She turned the tablet so they could all see. The dome's interior appeared in detailed 3-dimensional view. Red dots marked sensor positions throughout the structure. The test is designed around alien biology, Una said. Thermal sensors, motion detection, sound monitoring. All calibrated for specific species capabilities. And we don't have those capabilities, Daesung said. That's the problem. No, the problem is that the test assumes biology is fixed. That a species either has stealth abilities or doesn't. Una leaned forward. But humans are different. We don't have built-in abilities. We learn abilities. We train ourselves to do things our bodies weren't designed for. Hannah pulled the tablet closer, studying the sensor specifications. These thermal sensors are incredibly sensitive. 0.1 degree variation detection. Even if we could lower our body temperature, we'd have to match the exact ambient temperature of whatever zone we're in. What if we could? Yuna asked. Daesung shook his head. Humans can't control their body temperature. It's automatic, not entirely. Yuna closed her eyes for a moment, her breathing slowing visibly. After 30 seconds, she opened her eyes again. Check my pulse. Daesung pressed 2 fingers to her wrist. His eyebrows rose. That's significantly slower than it should be. 40% reduction, Yuna said. I learned this technique from my grandmother. It's based on ancient meditation practices that Korean monks used centuries ago. When your heart rate drops, your body temperature drops with it. Hannah's eyes widened with understanding. The sensors are calibrated for normal human vital signs. If your vitals aren't normal, the sensors might not recognize me as a life form at all. Yuna nodded. But that's only part of the solution. I can lower my temperature, but I can't eliminate my heat signature completely. That's where environmental camouflage comes in. Daesung straightened suddenly. My grandfather, he said. He was a hunter in the mountains. Real hunting, not sport. He used to tell me stories about approaching deer so close he could touch them. How? Hannah asked. Mud and leaves. He would cover himself with whatever matched the environment. The deer couldn't smell him, couldn't see him, couldn't sense his heat because he smelled and looked like the forest floor. Daesung's voice grew more excited. He called it becoming part of the land. Yuna smiled. If we cover ourselves with materials from the dome's environment, our thermal signatures would blend with the surroundings. The sensors would read us as part of the terrain. That solves thermal detection, Hannah said, her technical mind working quickly. But what about motion sensors? They can detect movement as small as 3 millimeters per second. That's almost impossible to avoid. Almost, Yuna agreed. But there's a threshold below which motion is registered as environmental noise. Wing movement, settling debris, natural shifts in terrain. If we move slowly enough, in small enough increments, we fall below that threshold. How slowly? Daesung asked. Very slowly. We're talking about hours to cross distances that would normally take minutes. But it's possible. Human hunters have been doing it for thousands of years. We just have to remember how. Hannah pulled up more data on her tablet. The sound sensors are the biggest problem, detecting heartbeats from 50 meters. Even with reduced heart rate, they'll hear us. The room fell silent as they considered this challenge. Daesung spoke first. Masking sound. When my grandfather hunted near streams, he would time his movements to the rhythm of the water. The natural sounds covered his own. The dome has water features, Yuna confirmed, checking the schematics. Rivers, waterfalls, artificial rain systems. If we stay near those, the ambient sound might mask our vitals. And if there's no water nearby? Yuna thought for a moment. Then we move only when other sounds occur. Machinery, other cadets being detected. Any ambient noise that spikes above baseline. Hannah was typing rapidly on her tablet. I can analyze the dome's environmental patterns. Predict when and where natural sounds will occur. If I feed that information to both of you before the test, then we'd know exactly when to move and when to freeze. Daesung finished. For the first time since the briefing, Yuna felt genuine hope. This could work, she said. It's not guaranteed. It requires perfect execution. But it could work. Hannah looked up from her calculations. There's one more thing. The visual sensors. We can't become invisible to cameras. No, Yuna agreed. But we can become uninteresting. Human military developed urban camouflage techniques based on how the brain processes visual information. If we move in patterns that the eye expects to see, if we become part of the background rather than standing out from it, the automated systems might classify us as environmental features, Hana said, not targets. They soon laughed quietly. So we're going to beat the most advanced detection system in the coalition using techniques our ancestors developed with sticks and mud. Our ancestors survived ice ages and predators that were faster, stronger, and more numerous than them, Yuna said. They did it by being smarter and more patient. We're just following their example. They spent the next 3 hours refining their plan. Hana analyzed environmental data until she could predict sound patterns with reasonable accuracy. They soon practiced moving in micro increments, training his body to shift so slowly that he seemed motionless even when in motion. Yuna worked on her breathing techniques, pushing her heart rate lower and lower until her body felt like it was barely a live dot at some point during the night. An alarm sounded through the station. Yuna checked her communicator. Her face went pale. What is it? Dae-seung asked. The assessment. It's been moved up. We start in 6 hours. That's not enough time, Hana said. I haven't finished the environmental analysis. You two haven't rested. Yuna stood up, her jaw set with determination. Then we work faster. And we don't rest at all. Dae-seung rose beside her. Our ancestors didn't always get to rest either. They did what needed to be done. Hana nodded, turning back to her tablet with renewed focus. All right, let's do this. Let's show them what humans are capable of. Outside their window, the station lights dimmed as the night cycle began. Somewhere in the distance, the assessment dome waited in darkness, its sensors active and hunting. It had been designed to be impossible, but humans had never been very good at accepting impossible. They had until dawn to prove that ancient knowledge could defeat modern technology, and none of them planned to waste a single minute. The assessment dome rose from the station's outer ring like a massive gray egg. 42 cadets stood at designated entry points around its perimeter, each separated by 200 meters. They could not see each other, but they all felt the same tension in the air. Yuna stood at entry point 17, her body covered in a thin layer of specialized paste that Hana had mixed from materials found in the station's supply rooms. It matched the temperature of her skin almost perfectly and would help her absorb environmental materials once inside. Her breathing was already slowing, her heart rate dropping toward the meditation state she had practiced. In her ear, a tiny communication device crackled. Environmental analysis complete, Hana's voice whispered. I'm sending the pattern data now. Sound spikes occur roughly every 4 minutes near water features. Mechanical noise from ventilation every 7 minutes. Trust the patterns. Understood. Yuna breathed back. At entry point 23. Dae-seung prepared in his own way. He had studied the terrain near his entry zone and planned his route along a shallow stream that wound toward the central area. Water would be his ally today. The starting signal sounded, a deep tone that echoed across the dome's exterior. 42 entry doors slid open. Simultaneously, Yuna stepped into darkness. The interior of the dome was vast and disorienting. Artificial trees rose toward a ceiling she could not see. Rocks and hills created complex terrain that blocked sightlines in every direction. And everywhere, hidden in shadows and behind fake plants, sensors waited. She did not run. She did not even walk normally. Instead, she dropped to her knees and began crawling toward a patch of dark soil nearby. Her movements were painfully slow, each motion calculated to stay below the 3 millimeter per second threshold that would trigger detection. It took her 15 minutes to crawl 3 meters. When she reached the soil patch, She began covering herself. Dirt on her arms, her legs, her face. Dead leaves pressed against her clothing. Within 30 minutes, she looked like part of the forest floor itself. Her temperature had dropped to match the soil around her. Her breathing was so shallow that her chest barely moved. Then she began to move again, slower than before. In the observation center high above the dome. Instructor Thelvos watched the display screens with growing confusion. 42 cadets had entered. Within the first hour, he had counted 30 eliminations. Cadets who moved too fast. Cadets who relied entirely on their natural abilities without considering the sensor's capabilities. Cadets who simply gave up. 12 remaining, announced the technician. Thel single quotes Voss studied the display. He could see 11 heat signatures still moving through the dome. The Valkyrie cadets' camouflage was working well, but thermal sensors still tracked their body heat. The Jorathi were doing better, their suppressed bioelectric fields making them harder to locate, but the effort was clearly exhausting them. "Wait," Thelvos said, his 4 eyes narrowing. "You said 12 remaining. I only count 11 signatures." The technician checked their instruments. "The entry log confirms 12 cadets have not been eliminated, but I only show 11 active signatures as well. Where's the 12th? They searched every sensor feed. Nothing. "It must be a human," the technician said. "They entered the dome. They haven't been eliminated, but they're not showing on any detection system." Thelvos felt something he had not experienced in many years. Uncertainty. Deep in the dome, Una pressed herself against a rock face and waited. 20 meters away, Cadet Rena crept through the shadows, her Felixari eyes perfectly adapted to the darkness. She moved with natural grace, confident in her species' legendary stealth abilities. Rena never saw Una. She walked right past her, close enough that Una could have reached out and touched her golden fur. But Una was not a person in that moment. She was a shadow, a patch of darkness, a rock. A sudden beep echoed through the dome. Rena froze. "Cadet Rena," an automated voice announced. "Eliminated. Sound signature detected. Please proceed to the nearest exit." Rena's ears flattened with frustration. She had been so focused on visual stealth that she forgot to control her breathing. Her rapid heartbeat had betrayed her. She walked toward the exit, passing Una's position again without a second glance. Una did not move, did not breathe, did not exist. 2 hours passed. Then 3 in another part of the dome. Daesung had submerged himself in the shallow stream. Only his face remained above water, covered in mud that matched the riverbank. He breathed through a hollow reed he had fashioned from local plant material, taking one slow breath every 30 seconds. The water masked his thermal signature completely. The ambient sound of flowing water covered his heartbeat. The mud concealed him from visual sensors. He moved upstream 1 centimeter at a time, letting the current hide any disturbance he created. Progress was measured in minutes per meter. He did not care. He had nowhere else to be. The observation center grew more crowded as word spread about the unusual assessment. Officers from other departments came to watch. Rumors about the missing human circulated through the station. 6 hours, Thelvos announced. 5 cadets remaining. 2 Jorathi, 2 Valkyrie, and... He paused. 1 unidentified. "Still no sign of the humans?" asked a visiting officer. "We located 1 human signature briefly near the western stream, but it disappeared again before we could confirm." Thelvos' voice carried a hint of frustration. "The other human has not appeared on any sensor since entry." "Impossible. The dome has complete coverage." "Apparently not." 7 hours in, the Jorathi cadets failed. Their bioelectric suppression could not be maintained indefinitely. When their fields flickered back to normal, Sensors immediately detected them. The Valkyrie lasted another 30 minutes before a slight shift in skin pigment caught a visual scanner's attention. 8 hours and 15 minutes after the assessment began, Thelvos faced an impossible situation. Only 2 cadets remained in the dome. Neither showed on any sensor. Both were human. "Send in the security teams," he ordered. Manual sweep. 20 guards entered the dome, spreading out in a search pattern. They carried handheld thermal scanners and motion detectors. They searched every shadow, every corner, every possible hiding spot. They found Daesoon after 45 minutes of searching. He was buried in sediment near the central zone, his body temperature indistinguishable from the mud around him. A guard walked directly over his position 3 times before a slight thermal fluctuation gave him away. Daesoon rose from the ground like a creature from a nightmare, covered head to toe in river mud. The guards stepped back in surprise, their training momentarily forgotten. "Cadet KO," the automated system announced. "Eliminated. Manual detection. Please proceed to the nearest exit." Daesoon smiled beneath the mud. He had lasted longer than any marathon in the program's history. That was enough. But Yuna was still in there. 10 minutes later, alarms blared throughout the observation center. The objective room sensors had activated. Someone had reached the central console. Thelvos ran every camera feed at once. He saw nothing enter the room. He saw no movement in the corridors leading to it. He saw only an empty room, and then suddenly, impossibly, a human standing at the console with her hand on the victory marker. Yuna Park had completed the assessment. When security reached the objective room, they found her waiting calmly, still covered in dirt and leaves. Her breathing was slow. Her heartbeat was barely detectable. "How did you get in here?" a guard demanded. Yuna looked at him with tired but triumphant eyes. "I walked," she said simply. Very, very slowly. Behind her, the victory marker glowed with confirmation of her success. The impossible assessment had been completed, and no one had seen her do it. The observation center had never been so crowded. Officers, instructors, and technical staff filled every available space, all staring at the screens that showed Yuna Park standing in the objective room. Thelvos sat in his command chair, his 4 eyes fixed on the impossible image before him. "Replay the footage," he ordered. "All angles. Maximum enhancement." The technicians worked quickly, pulling up every camera feed from the past 8 hours. They tracked Yuna's position from her entry point, trying to understand how she had reached the center without triggering a single alert. "There," one technician said, pointing at a screen. "Thermal signature at hour 2, sector 7. They enhanced the image. A slight variation in ground temperature, barely distinguishable from the surrounding soil. It could have been a warm rock, a pocket of heated air, a natural fluctuation in the environment." "That's her," Thelvos said quietly. "She was right there, and we classified her as terrain." The door to the observation center opened. Academy Director Vorshin entered, his gray marathon skin dark with curiosity. He was older than Thelvos, with silver markings around his eyes that indicated decades of service. "I received reports of an unusual assessment," Vorshin said. "Explain." Thelvos stood to address his superior. 2 human cadets completed the assessment, Director. One was detected by manual search after 8 hours. The other, he paused, searching for words. The other reached the objective without triggering any automated detection system. Vorshin's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep surprise. "That is not possible. The dome was designed by our finest engineers. It has been used for 200 years. No cadet has ever avoided all detection. Until today." Thelvos gestured at the screens. "We are reviewing the footage now. It appears the human used a combination of environmental camouflage, controlled vital signs, and movement patterns so slow that our systems classified her as background noise. Vorshin walked closer to the main display. The footage showed a section of rocky terrain near the objective room. For several minutes, nothing seemed to happen. Then, so gradually that it was almost impossible to perceive, a shape began to emerge from the shadows. "Enhance that section," Vorshin ordered. The image zoomed in. What had appeared to be a rocky outcropping was actually Yuna pressed flat against the stone, her body covered in dust and debris that matched the surface perfectly. She moved so slowly that the eye wanted to dismiss her as stationary. "How long did it take her to cross that corridor?" Vorshin asked. 47 minutes, a technician answered. For a distance of 12 meters. Vorshin was silent for a long moment. "Bring her here," he finally said. "I want to speak with this human." Yuna arrived at the observation center still covered in dirt. She had refused the offer to clean up, saying she wanted the instructors to see exactly what she had done. Guards escorted her to the center of the room, where she stood before Thelvos and Vorshin. "Corporal Park," Vorshin said, studying her with all four eyes. "You have achieved something that was considered impossible for 200 years. I require an explanation." Yuna met his gaze without fear. "Which part would you like me to explain, Director?" "All of it." "From the beginning." Yuna took a breath, organizing her thoughts. "Your assessment was designed around the assumption that stealth is a biological trait. You believed that species either evolved with stealth capabilities or they didn't. Humans didn't. So we were expected to fail. A reasonable assumption based on available evidence," Thelvos said. "Reasonable, but incomplete." Yuna's voice was calm and confident. "Humans have no natural camouflage, no ability to suppress our heat signatures, no built-in silent movement. But we have something your species doesn't. 300,000 years of learning to compensate for our weaknesses." "Explain," Vorshin said. "Humans evolved as persistence hunters. We had no claws, no fangs, no speed. Our ancestors survived by tracking prey over long distances and approaching them without being detected. We developed techniques that allowed us to control our breathing, lower our heart rates, and move so slowly that animals could not perceive us as threats." Yuna gestured at her dirt-covered body. "This isn't technology. This is ancient knowledge. My grandmother taught me meditation techniques that Korean monks perfected over thousands of years. They soon learned environmental camouflage from hunters in his family. We combined old wisdom with modern understanding of your sensor systems." "You studied our sensors," Thelvos said. It was not a question. "Of course. Your thermal sensors detect temperature variations. So I lowered my body temperature through controlled breathing and covered myself with materials that matched the environment. Your motion sensors track movement above a certain threshold. So I moved below that threshold. Your sound sensors listen for heartbeats. So I slowed my heart until it was barely beating." Vorshin leaned forward. "And the visual sensors? How did you avoid those?" "I didn't avoid them. I fooled them." Yuna allowed herself a small smile. "Your automated systems are programmed to identify targets based on expected patterns. They look for movement, for heat, for shapes that match known species profiles. I made myself into something they weren't looking for. A rock, a shadow, a piece of the environment." The observation center was completely silent. Officers who had spent their careers believing in the superiority of natural abilities were confronting evidence that contradicted everything they knew. "You moved 12 meters in 47 minutes, Vorshin said slowly. "That requires a level of patience that most species would consider impossible." "Patience is a human specialty," Yuna said. "We waited in caves for Manus to pass. We sat motionless in blinds for days waiting for prey. We stared at stars for centuries until we understood how the universe worked. Patience is not something we struggle with, Director. It is something we excel at. Talvo stepped forward. Corporal Park, I owe you an apology. Before the assessment, I told you that learned techniques could not overcome biological limitations. I was wrong. You were working with incomplete information, Una said. Humans have not been part of the coalition long enough for you to understand what we're capable of. Then help us understand. Vorshin's voice carried new respect. What other capabilities have humans developed through learning rather than evolution? Una thought for a moment. We taught ourselves to survive in environments that should have killed us. Deserts with no water. Mountains with no air. The bottom of our oceans. The vacuum of space. Every time we encountered an environment we weren't designed for, we found ways to adapt. Not through evolution, through determination. And you believe these techniques can be taught to other species? Vorshin asked. I believe any species with discipline and patience can learn them. The question is whether they're willing to try. Una looked around the room at the faces watching her. Your civilizations have had natural abilities for so long that you've forgotten how to develop new ones. Humans never had that luxury. We've been developing new abilities our entire existence. Vorshin turned to Thelvos. I want a full review of our training curriculum. If humans have techniques that our sensors cannot detect, we need to understand them. And we need to consider how to incorporate them into our programs. Yes, Director. Vorshin looked back at Una. Corporal Park, you have given us much to consider. When the official results are announced, I expect you will receive the highest score in this assessment's history. Thank you, Director. Do not thank me yet. High scores come with high expectations. And I suspect the Coalition will have many questions about what humans can teach us. Una nodded, accepting the weight of that responsibility. She had come to this academy hoping to prove that humans belonged among the stars. She had done something far more significant. She had shown the galaxy that sometimes the most powerful abilities are not the ones you're born with. They're the ones you learn, and humans had been learning for a very, very long time. The Academy auditorium was filled to capacity. Every seat held an officer, instructor, or cadet. Hundreds more watched through video feeds broadcast across the station. The final assessment results were usually a routine announcement, but word had spread about what the humans had accomplished. Everyone wanted to witness this. Una sat in the front row between Daesung and Hana. She had finally cleaned up, her uniform pressed and her hair neatly tied back. But she still felt the ghost of dried mud on her skin, a reminder of the hours she had spent becoming invisible. Director Vorshin stood at the podium, his gray form commanding attention. 2 days ago, 42 cadets entered the assessment dome. The exercise was designed to test infiltration skills against the most advanced sensor technology in the Coalition. It was expected that most would fail. It was assumed that certain species would have natural advantages. He paused, letting the silence build. Those assumptions were wrong. A murmur passed through the audience. Vorshin waited for it to settle before continuing. For 200 years, the highest score in this assessment was held by a Mirathan cadet who evaded detection for 6 hours and 12 minutes. That record was broken twice in a single assessment. His 4 eyes found the humans in the front row. Cadet Daeshun Ko evaded all automated detection for 8 hours and 15 minutes. He was only found through manual search by security teams who walked directly over his position 3 times before locating him. Applause erupted through the auditorium. Daesung nodded in acknowledgement, his face calm but his eyes showing quiet pride. However, Vorshin continued, the highest score belongs to Corporal Una Park. She completed the entire assessment without triggering a single automated alert. The security teams never found her. She simply appeared at the objective after evading detection for 8 hours and 43 minutes. The applause was louder this time, mixed with whispers of disbelief. Yuna rose and bowed slightly to the audience before sitting back down. This accomplishment forces us to reconsider many things we believed about capability and limitation, Vorshin said. Corporal Park did not succeed because of biological advantages. She succeeded because of skills her species developed over hundreds of thousands of years. Skills that we dismissed as primitive. Skills that proved superior to our most advanced technology. He turned to address the instructors seated along the side of the auditorium. I am ordering a complete review of our training programs. We have focused too long on natural abilities while ignoring learned techniques. This changes today. Instructor Thelvo stood from his seat. All eyes turned to him. Director, if I may speak. Vorshin nodded. Proceed. Thelvos walked to the front of the auditorium, facing the assembly. Before this assessment, I told Corporal Park that she should withdraw. I told her that learned techniques could not overcome biological limitations. I told her that humans were not designed for infiltration. He paused. I was completely wrong. Another murmur rippled through the crowd. It was rare for a senior instructor to admit error so publicly. I have submitted a request to modify the reconnaissance curriculum, Thelvos continued. With Director Vorshin's approval, I am proposing that human stealth methodologies be incorporated into our standard training. Breath control, environmental camouflage, ultra-slow movement patterns. These techniques work. I witnessed the proof myself. He turned to face Yuna directly. Corporal Park, on behalf of the instruction staff, I apologize for underestimating your species. And I formally request that you consider a position as assistant instructor for the new cross-species stealth program. Yuna stood again, feeling the weight of the moment. I accept, she said. But I have one condition. Name it. This isn't just my knowledge to share. They soon developed techniques different from mine. Hana analyzed the sensor systems and found patterns we could exploit. We succeeded because we worked together. If I teach, they teach with me. Thelvos looked at Disung and Hana, then back at Yuna. Agreed. The three of you will lead the program together. The applause that followed was genuine and sustained. It marked something new in the Academy's history, a moment when old assumptions gave way to new understanding. After the ceremony ended, Yuna found herself surrounded by cadets asking questions. How did she slow her heart rate? How long did it take to learn? Could they do it too? She answered patiently, explaining the basics of breath control and patience. But she knew that understanding the techniques was only the beginning. Mastering them would take years of practice. Rena approached her when the crowd thinned. The Felixary's golden fur was sleek with embarrassment, her ears flat against her head. Corporal Park, she said formally, I spoke poorly of your species before the assessment. I was arrogant and wrong. I would like to ask your forgiveness. Yuna studied her for a moment. There's nothing to forgive. You believed what your experience taught you. Now you have new experience. I would like to learn your techniques, Rena said. If you are willing to teach someone who insulted you, I'm willing to teach anyone who wants to learn. Yuna smiled slightly. But I should warn you, learning human patience is not easy. Our ancestors spent generations perfecting these skills. You'll need to practice for years. I am prepared to try. Then find me tomorrow morning. First lesson starts at dawn. Rena nodded gratefully and departed. Other cadets took her place, each with questions and requests. The line seemed endless. Daesung eventually rescued Yuna from the crowd, leading her to a quiet corner of the auditorium. Hana joined them there, her tablet already filled with notes for the new training program. We did it, Hana said. her voice filled with wonder. "We actually did it. We did something," Yuna agreed. "But this is just the beginning. Teaching these techniques to alien species will be harder than doing them ourselves. Then we'll figure out how," Daesung said. "Same as always. One problem at a time." Through the auditorium windows, they could see the assessment dome in the distance. It still stood there, massive and imposing, its sensors still active and hunting. Tomorrow, new cadets would enter it and face the same impossible challenge. But tomorrow, those cadets would have new knowledge. Human knowledge. Techniques perfected over thousands of generations by a species that never accepted impossible as an answer. In the observation center, Thelvo sat alone, reviewing his notes for future training manuals. He had spent his career categorizing species by their natural abilities. Fast species. Strong species. Stealthy species. It had seemed like a complete system. He pulled up the file on humans and looked at the assessment he had written before Yuna proved him wrong. Under species assessment, human, he had typed a single word, limited. He deleted it. For a long moment, he stared at the blank space, considering what to write instead. Humans were not fast. They were not strong. They had no natural advantages that other species did not possess in greater measure. But they had something else. Something that didn't fit neatly into categories. A willingness to learn. A refusal to accept limitations. A patience that could outlast any sensor, any technology, any assumption. Thelvos typed a single word and saved the file. Unpredictable. It was not a complete description. No single word could capture what humans were capable of. But it was a start. And as Thelvos had learned today, humans were very good at starting with something small and building it into something extraordinary. Somewhere in the station, Unipark was preparing for tomorrow's first lesson. The galaxy was about to learn what 300,000 years of human survival could teach them. The impossible had been proven possible. Now it was time to make it common.